morning. Thank you for all tuning in to our final presentations. We're happy you could join us. We are Slippery Oats, as Huan mentioned. My name is Dara Benno. I'm a grad student in ID.
Hi, I'm Isa. I'm a junior in ID.
I'm Sam. I'm a senior in ID.
I'm Charlotte, a junior in ID.
I'm Julian. I'm also a graduate student in ID.
So we thought we would start by giving you a bit of an overview on our program objective. Our objective was to design a cohesive curriculum that wasn't only fun, but also supportive of a common theme and considering psychosocial impacts, all that could be easily translatable across different target groups. By only requiring the use of a camera to accomplish our projects, we aimed to limit material constraints and increase the participation rate of all of our activities. Each of the 3 activities was designed with the potential to stand alone, but also encourage participation throughout the week, culminating in a final project that participants would be proud of and excited to share. It was also really important for us to consider how the curriculum could encourage the participants to reflect further throughout the week and how the theme could be applied toward personal matters, as well as help identify ways to work through potential differences with others. As for our target group, we landed on the refugee minors, which are all boys in this case, between the ages of 13 and 17 years old. Within that group of minors, there's the accompanied and unaccompanied boys, as well as those living in apartments, shelters, refugee camps, and on the street. In considering this target group, as I mentioned in our project objective, we really wanted to try and include as many users as possible and limit the restrictions in order to facilitate a successful online course structure and project outcome. So moving on to talking a bit about our design process. Communication throughout this process was super important to us, and not just communication within our group, but also communication with our classmates, with Huan, and with the Pharos and Horizon Center staff. So of course, we start, like everyone does, gathering information, but we really took this kind of circular approach of gathering information, talking, coming up with possible themes, gathering more information, synthesizing this information, considering our all the considerations that we're going to mention, possible problem statements, and when we came to a good list, decided to get together, meet with the Horizon Center staff, talk to the social workers, see if we were on the right track, and then move on to the next phase of coming up with possible activities and program scenarios, as well as how the psychosocial learnings would fit into those possibilities. More communication, more info gathering, synthesizing, and then moving on to developing programming further, coming up with final scripts, making our videos, and then finally user testing. And we'll dive deeper into these components right now.
Hi, everyone. So we began gathering information in our group by using one of Huan's design tools that he mentioned earlier, one called Oats, which stands for Observe, Ask, and Try. Also, hence our name, Slippery Oats, because this process was so helpful to us. We decided to put it in our name, our group name. So we began with observing, but obviously due to the pandemic, and also because the beneficiaries are minors and their safety and privacy is of concern, we were limited in how we could observe, what our beneficiaries were looking for, and also, the context of their daily lives. We had to observe all of these things online. And so that was a constraint that we kind of shared with our beneficiaries. But we started research by looking at, kind of the context around displaced peoples in Athens and what they could potentially be dealing with day to day, living conditions in refugee camps or in shelters, and also just what public perception of displaced peoples are, to get an idea of what our beneficiaries could be potentially dealing with in the day-to-day. And we also looked at ways that kids are being educated online, looking at online learning platforms. We looked at, countless DIY YouTube videos that helped show design learning through craft, and we learned more about psychosocial help through humanitarian work via TED Talks. We read countless blog posts by moms, sharing activities to keep their kids busy. So we really tried to look at, all of these things, all of the ways in which kids were being educated online, and we compiled that research into documents like the one that you see on the screen here, and tried to start to come up with activities that would benefit the boys. And so the next portion of that design research tool was Ask. And again, because of the privacy, because of the needed privacy of the beneficiaries, we couldn't ask the boys directly, what they needed or wanted. So we talked a lot with Faro's staff about, what the boys expected, what they truly needed. And one of the main points from Faro's staff in talking to, Huan, Dimitris, Iman, and Mickey, we came up with some psychosocial goals to kind of incorporate into the lessons to help our beneficiaries. And we realized that some of the most important things for the boys were to promote agency and dignity in the lessons. We wanted them to enjoy what they were doing and feel confident in, expressing themselves and their creativity. We wanted them to feel connected to their community and feel a sense of social responsibility and social awareness. We also wanted them to think critically of their work and be able to problem solve, when situations don't always have a lot of, resources for you to work with. We also determined that, the boys really loved friendly competition, but they also loved to have fun and share their projects with their friends and the Faro staff. So we wanted to incorporate these things into our programming. But the boys are also quick to learn, so we didn't want to make anything too easy for them. And some constraints that we all talked about with the Faro staff were the fact that, the boys had there was limited communication with the beneficiaries. So a lot of the boys, don't have a lot of phone data, so they might not be able to watch videos, or, because of the language barriers, it can be hard to find translators all the time. So these were some of the constraints that we had to consider when designing the programming. And so we took all of this information and tried to start sorting it out and finding possible themes within all of the activities and all of the, psychosocial points that we wanted to keep in mind. We found some common threads, and those common threads were problem solving, habit building, sharing, and storytelling. So those were some key phrases that we wanted to keep in mind when thinking about themes in the future. And one of the ways that we exercised our own creativity was by taking all of our research and our activities and working on possible themes. So on the document on the right here, you can see where we would put one idea in the left column, and so each member of our team would have a different idea, and then we would build off of those ideas and try to create, a themed activity set. And so that's kind of one of the ways we tried to come up with some cohesive lessons.
So we ruminated on activities for quite some time. At times, the methods felt really productive. At times, we kind of felt adrift. And luckily, we kind of spiraled into this wonderful theme of perspective, which we're all really happy about. So from coming up with our theme, the next step was to develop a problem statement. The importance of this was to get everyone focused on the same way, and then getting it in writing helps us all get on the same page. It's also a really easy way to share it with people. So refugees need a way to find optimism and encouragement in their challenging situations so that they can grow their confidence and continue to envision a path to a safe and successful new life. We plan to use the concept of perspective to teach ways of exploring material, form, and function, comparative routine, and good old-fashioned fun. Through these exercises, beneficiaries will gain confidence in their critical thinking and problem solving, as well as develop their sense of self and social awareness. So with that theme, we really wanted to get our psychosocial learnings on paper to further help us with our direction for our actual activities. So the theme of perspective, we think, is a really good one of the psychosocial learnings, because perspective isn't just about photography. Telescoping is something that I'm personally a victim of at times, of getting too close to an idea when I'm thinking of it. I often find that like taking a walk or getting a different like perspective or a breath of fresh air kind of helps you from being like so close that you can't see the answer. There's also like differing viewpoints. A big thing of perspective is empathy, right? Seeing other people's perspectives, understanding that their life and viewpoints are different than yours is a valuable personal skill, but also like working with people with differing opinions helps you be a stronger designer. So from there, we got to like testing different actual activities based on theme. Thinking of activities is one thing, but when you actually, where the rubber meets the road is when you start actually using them. So these were a couple of our things. We really went for quantity. So small things big is forced perspective. Fun little guys is a personal or like a group favorite, which is just finding little faces around your house. Glass half full, a little cheeky positive name, was about distortion. We also looked into things about reflection, including mirrors, and composition kind of focused on alignment and unalignment. We also did things playing with shadows, playing with gravity. There I am juggling knives, scale, which is a lot of like forced perspective things we were working with. We also looked into drawing and measurement. From there, we took all those possible activities and kind of broke them down into like how a programming week would work. So on the left-hand side, you see our possible themes: photography and perspective, photo and drawing apart, and then like Monday, Wednesday, Friday programming with sub-themes and possible activities that fit in those sub-themes.
And here is our final dissemination schedule. Under the theme of perspective, we have activity 1, which is composition, and it was released on Monday. And we have activity 2, scale, which was released last Thursday. And on the following Monday, which is the Monday just passed, we disseminated activity 3, which is playing with gravity. And for each activity, we write a script first, then test with like our friends, and then adding images and GIFs, and then test again, and then record a video. So we also create a promo video that introduced the STEM and an overview of the challenge, and release like 5 days before the first activity. And in the end, we were able to create this package of 1 promo video and 3 activities videos and 3 PDF scripts. And we upload them to YouTube and Facebook. So for the first activity, which is composition, we asked the beneficiaries to build a composition considering the concept of alignment. By changing the camera angle, they can create a desired perspective. And as for the outcome, they will take pictures that create an illusion through intentional camera angle manipulation. All of our videos follows the steps of learn, imagine, and create. In the step 1 learning, to better show the concept of alignment and composition, we showed a couple examples of what is aligned perspective and what is unaligned perspective. And following the second step, we asked them to look around the house and find several objects they want to create this illusion, and just to like play around with the position of the objects. And for the third step, which is create, we asked them to take the camera, and by changing the camera angle, they were able to create a certain illusion. As for the reflection, we asked them to consider if different illusions can be created through different camera angle, then changing perspective when looking at things is very useful as well. So how do you handle someone having a different perspective from you, and how might you be able to understand someone's different opinion, and perhaps their perspective is slightly different, but aiming to achieve the same thing. And here are some user testing we did before releasing the activity. So the first is all showing in the pattern of aligned and unaligned. And the first two pictures shows how the actual example we used in the video. And following the first activity composition, we have the scale activity, which is asking them to compose a situation that considers alignment in order to manipulate scale. We also mentioned how important is trial and error, and let them to have fun in this activity. And for design outcome, we ask them to create a fourth perspective with regard to object size and distance considerations. For step 1, learning, we showed an example, a really simple example, to introduce the idea of what is foreground and what is background. And the second step, imagine, we asked them to just think with us to create a photo that considering scale, where you can place your object, where you should place your camera, and where you should be standing. And for third step, create, we walk them through this specific example of how you can create this image of you standing in your cup. And for reflection, we ask them to think about how can scale relate to real life situations. When is it important to take a step back and reevaluate next steps? And here are also some pictures that we got from the user testing.
So the last activity is playing with gravity. The objective is to create an illusion using photography, such as to make the wall look like the floor in a photo. During this activity, we were trying to utilize the skills that we're able to learn from previous 2 activities throughout the week, and getting the beneficiaries excited about sharing what they've come up with. So design outcome is to provoke creative thinking and experimentations in order to achieve a desired result. Also to create a fun and interesting fourth perspective that could cause the viewers need to take a second look at what's going on in the photo. So this activity is also composed by learn, imagine, and create. In the first step, learn, we talked about how to arrange and align selective objects that could make the photo defies gravity, like explaining how to pretend the wall is the floor so the viewers could be tricked. Then people could imagine what they want to create in the second step, how they want to arrange the props in order to achieve a desired result. The last step is to create the photos as many as possible, then choose the best one and edit it. So as for the reflection, we were asking them to think about how turning things upside down could make people see them more clearly. Is it possible that shifting perspective could make the solution seem as it had been right the whole time? As you can see from the slide, here are some user testing of the activity from friends and family. we can see that people are able to defy gravity by only rotating the photo. So after we sent out the video, we were able to get some results from the participants. And the first activity composition broke a record for most remote learning participants. But some people didn't send in 2 photos of aligned and unaligned instead of just 1 photo of an aligned composition. It's just something that we noted from our results. So during the group work, we were trying to be communicative and collaborative about information during brainstorming session and the following ideation and discussion. We try to make everyone has equal divisions of responsibility and try to respond to everyone's feedback in the discussions. For the curriculum, we confirmed that it's good to have lessons to be flexible in thinking about how they would translate across target group. Because our lessons are going to be used for women's group as well, the lesson itself will not need to be changed, but only need to change some video format, just because they may be not interested in some of the fun gifts that we put in. Also, it would be helpful to have a clear lesson breakdown and examples, because in the video, we broke down the lessons really well and make sure they were clear. However, we noticed based on some results we got back from activity 1, that it seemed to like that some boys are already doing some kind that will be included in activity 2. So we aren't 100% sure about that because we don't have results from activity 2. It's just a speculation. And the reading script is important because of the language barrier and data constraints. So besides it's really useful for us in making the video for each lesson, it's also good for the beneficiaries as well. Also, including reflection questions for each activity could help guiding the beneficiaries to reflect on some conversations that's related to the learning itself afterwards. And learning is fun.
As for next steps, as Charlotte mentioned, it would be to figure out what would need to change slightly for the actual presentation of the curriculum in order to relay it to the women's group as well. We would also want to consider how the curriculum might change once the classroom resumes to in-person learning and how physicality can be brought back into that, as well as continue the conversation about perspective and how it relates to the community and the self. Regarding considerations for future, as Charlotte mentioned, we don't have results from activities 2 and 3, but you may have figured out that we were the first group to disseminate, so we disseminated our first activity last week. Because of the summer and the weather, as well as Ramadan taking place, the stay-at-home order being lifted, all these certain factors kind of affected activity 2 and activity 3. So in the future with planning for dissemination, it would be good to consider scheduling and holiday and season structure. Language barrier as well is very important to consider, as well as the direct support structure of the participants. As Charlotte mentioned, we provided the written script that was in Farsi for the beneficiaries. However, it's really good to have someone firsthand kind of communicating with them as well, encouraging them and reaching out to them. Many of them don't respond too much to English, and so with limited people on the Faro staff being able to communicate in Farsi with the beneficiaries, we found that there was less of a response directly to the encouragement in English. We also think it would be good to consider exploring other means of digital safe spaces in order for the beneficiaries to share their work and feedback with each other, such as maybe creating an app. Currently, as we mentioned, the curriculum is being shared on Facebook and WhatsApp, but we would really love for there to be some sort of culture of sharing and discussing as a way to increase connectivity and develop a sense of community among the beneficiaries. And last, there would be the consideration of consistent messaging with deliverables and clarity toward beneficiary needs. So, you know, many of the groups, including ourselves, created videos which are really fun and can be great to use. However, along with the language barrier and phone data, what actually is the most helpful is a written script. So maybe coming up with kind of a streamlined deliverable that's used throughout the program. And then here we have links to our design process Miro boards and some of our Excel docs that we compiled our information in, as well as links to our final activity videos and the script for all of our activities if anyone wants to take a look. And we thank you so much for your time and welcome any questions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. That was a great presentation. Just so you know, we will share all these slides and then all the videos onto a Google Drive. I will send out the link to that so you guys can take a look at it. Most of these videos are 4 to 5 minutes long, so it was kind of impossible to show these videos in this presentation, but you are more than welcome to watch them. They're very good, very high quality, very funny to watch, and very fun for the boys to actually enjoy them. One thing that we kind of talked about when creating the videos was to try to make it as entertaining as possible, which the students did a great job with that. But yes, I'll open the floor for any feedback or questions you have for this team.
I can start. So this was really great. It's really exciting to see the things you guys were able to accomplish, especially in this constrained environment, and something that, sorry, I'm Hannah. I'm a senior at MIT, and I spoke with some of you at D-Lab. And I've gone back to RISD twice. But I think that integrating perspective into these, in this very concrete and tangible way, was a great way to include character building and psychosocial development along with these super fun activities. They love working with the camera. And it was definitely a cohesive theme throughout. This is something that is kind of a broader question. I don't know if you guys have considered it, but something that was a big part of our lessons when we were in Greece was the reflection component. We would try and have all these fun things and then have this kind of discussion with the boys. And we found that that was kind of what made everything click, and it was super important. Are there ways to continue that sort of reflection over this electronic online platform, or ways to make it a little bit easier?
So that was one thing that this group really wanted to stress. I think we're really all big into the reflection as the way to really hammer home the lesson, for boys to feel positive affirmation from one another, for sharing. It kind of also, sparks a little bit of ingenuity. I think the main struggle with that was this sudden shift into learning online, and because of that, the Pharos communication with the beneficiaries was all one-on-one to begin with. So that's why, for our considerations, we mentioned that there should be a platform that kind of helps foster that encouragement. I think a like button or a heart button is so easy to do, very low stakes, and goes a long way. But beyond that, having a Zoom call or some sort of thing where they have dialogue amongst themselves would be important. It's just was a very quick shift, and everyone was kind of starting from the ground floor and building that online sharing and communicating culture. So yeah, it's definitely in the future something we'd really like to put into that.
Any other feedback?
This is Sally. I'm not sure if this was mentioned and I missed it, but have you guys gotten any feedback from the students themselves? How have they been responding to it?
So we actually just had a call, what day is today? All the days blend together. With Dimitris, and we were asking that question as well because we really wanted to hear back from the boys. He said that most of the time they pretty much are like, yeah, it was cool, or like, yeah, it was great, you know, like one-word answers. How was your day? Good, you know, that kind of a thing. So that's like a huge win, at least that sort of response. And he was really excited to tell us that we broke the record for the amount of participants in an activity for remote learning, which was really exciting for the first activity. But after that, once the order was lifted for the stay at home, the weather in Greece is like in the high 90s right now. Everyone's going to the beach. And also with like holiday times, they just stopped responding. And so it's not, unfortunately, right now, that's kind of why we also mentioned considering dissemination schedules with regard to season and holidays, because you could see how many people had even viewed the videos. So it wasn't a matter of like viewing the videos and just not responding, but they were just leaving their phones behind and doing whatever they wanted to do. So that would be something that we'd love to find out in the future once the activity is reintroduced.
Yeah, that's actually super interesting. I feel like that's something I've definitely seen on a project I'm working in Jordan. When the kids are stuck at home, I think it's easier to be engaged with things that are online. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, we were trying to kind of talk about how like you can also do it at the beach. Don't worry, you know, like play with the perspective of the ocean or something. But actually, when you think about it, it's kind of nice that they're not on their phones when they're at the beach. But you know, so it's like.
I also think that's kind of where building community ties into. So like to up responses, it's important for this to like not seem like homework, but seem like a fun thing that you want to share with your friends. I think like student feedback in general can be really hard, especially with remote learning. It's really easy for someone to be like, that was fun, or that was cool, or maybe that was bogus. But I think for the most part, the beneficiaries have been pretty positive towards the FARO staff. So it's like in the feedback sessions, is there like a very low stakes way for them to give more constructive criticism?
I actually have a question about that. Did you guys, well, I guess that would make it a little more like homework, but did you guys consider having maybe like a Google form that you'd send out for feedback in like Farsi and English and like whatever other languages they speak?
We kind of left that to having spoken with the FAROS team about how they handle the reflection and discussions. Like they were having calls once a week, I believe, if they could get together with, or like contact the beneficiaries. If they would respond, they would organize like a Friday call or do these like one-on-one sessions. But because of, you know, in trying to consider literacy levels and that kind of a thing, as well as language barrier, we just felt like providing something that they would need to fill out might not be the best option, but maybe some sort of like survey where you would kind of click a dot or something more like with icons could be good to consider in the future.
And that's also where having one platform ties in, because based off what we heard from the FARO staff is like they were slow to adopt new forms of things. So disseminating like a Google form would be harder than having it be on the Facebook platform or whatever platform they're most comfortable with.
That makes sense. Thank you.